turn it over to Ranking Member Fischer.
Thank you, Chairman Klobuchar. Secretary Bunch, in February, Nebraska's Winnebago Tribal Chairwoman and council members visited the National Museum of the American Indians Cultural Resources Center, and they viewed some of their cultural artifacts at that time. They told me that it was a very powerful experience for them, and that your staff there was extremely helpful. So thank you very much. While they have not yet made an official repatriation request for the artifacts, if they do, what does that process look like? What does it entail for them?
We have a very robust sense of repatriation. They will put a request in. The Smithsonian Museum of American History will look, Museum of American Indian will look at it. Will then sort of assess their basic questions. Is it a federally sponsored tribe, et cetera? And once those questions are answered, then what we do is bring people back to Washington to look at the particular artifacts they're interested in and then make some final determination. So it's a process, but it's something that's fair and has worked very well with other tribes.
Do you, and I assume this, your answer will be yes, do you work with the tribes in looking at the facilities that need to be in place where these artifacts are going to be stored to make sure that that they're going to be preserved in a manner that has to be adhered to, and then do you help with funding for that? Do they need to handle all that on their own? Where do we go on that?
What we do is we want to make sure that both the tribe is satisfied, but that the artifacts are preserved. And so therefore we look to see what facilities they have, what capability they have. There are times that we will give direction that would be very helpful to do this. We unfortunately don't have the resources to actually help them, but I think the most important thing is to recognize that we want to be able to return what the communities really want, and that's really part of our goal.
Right. I know the chairwoman and the council members, of course, they want to make sure that they are looking not just at the needs of their current generation of the tribe, but of the generations that these artifacts belong to, and to make sure that they adhere to their beliefs and principles, and then, of course, meet the conditions that you would put on them as well. Mr. Secretary, I also understand that on March 24th, there was a food truck parked at 12th Street and Constitution Avenue in between the Smithsonian American History and the Natural History Museums. It caught fire. It was fully engulfed in flames when the firefighters arrived. The photos that I've seen from that incident were very alarming, to say the least. Are these food trucks a regular safety concern for you?
You know, I understand the convenience of the food trucks. I understand how it's important if within the city of Washington, D.C. for the business that these food trucks create. But candidly, they really cause a problem for us because there are two levels of food trucks. There are those that have the permits, which really are in the right spots, and then those that just sort of take whatever spot they can. And so it's become a problem on several levels. First of all, there's a problem of, it really has an impact on my staff. There are trash issues, there are taking care of the rodents issues, but also the way that these trucks are parked is people then sort of take advantage of the green space, and there's a lot of damage to the property of the Smithsonian. We're working with the city of Washington, D.C., the National Park Service, and others, but I want to be candid, we haven't resolved that yet. Luckily, the truck that burst on fire didn't affect any other trucks. The person wasn't severely hurt, but to me, it's a warning. And it's a warning that says that we want to be as fair as we can, but we've really got to protect the public and protect the Smithsonian.
Well, let us know if we can do anything on that. I think it's a big problem. Your team recently completed 70% of the Smithsonian's facilities conditions assessment program using a new methodology designed to provide a more comprehensive assessment. What have you learned from that so far, and what's the significance of the new data that's been compiled from it, please?
Well, it's part of my strategic sense of how we should address the deferred maintenance. Part of the issue for me was that we wanted to no longer look at deferred maintenance and capital as two different things, to really think about strategically how we put together those two entities so that, for example, when we did the National Air and Space Museum, we also took care of a lot of the backlog. So then the question was, do we have realistic numbers? So we put together a new process that said to us, here's ways to look at valuation, here's ways to understand and calculate inflation, and so the numbers are now high, but it's not the fact that there's new problems. It really is that the numbers allow us to have a more realistic way of doing it. So now what that allows me to do is to figure out where we should put our priorities based on what's the greatest need and what's the greatest need that allows us to continue to serve the public as effectively as we can. So this has really been part of an overarching strategy that allows us to really sort of focus our resources, make the changes we want, and begin to deal with deferred maintenance. The reality is, for having buildings that have 29 million people that go through them for 364 days a year, deferred maintenance is probably one of the biggest challenges we face.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Fisher. We're joined by Senator Warner, who's